Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2023 week 9, which is February 27th to March 5th. Alright, so as it turns out, I do not have the connector that I needed for the dash, so we're going to leave the dash, which is where we left off at the end of the last video, and I'm going to move over and start some of the wiring for the coil packs here. So we're going to start this just by zip tying the wires up to the bar, because that's where I'm going to run the electrical for this stuff. If I recall correctly, that's a DTP4 that I'm grabbing out, so get up to 23 amps, and that's going to be for the coil ground power and the head ground. So this is all something you've seen me do before: cut the wires, strip the wires, crimp the ends onto the wires, put them in the connectors. So I don't think there's anything too special going on here. Alright, now that the big power wires are connected, we can move on to the signal wires. So this is going to be I think it's a DTM6 connector I use, and this is just for small 18 to, I think this is for 18 to 22 gauge wires, and these are all 20 or 22, I think. So doing the same thing, cut them to length, strip them, put them all into the connectors. The only difference with this is, as you can see, there's already a end on the coil side. So what that means is that I need to cut that end off and redo it with my Deutsch connector. The reason why I'm doing that is I have a bunch of spare parts for the Deutsch connectors. I have spare connectors, terminals, etc. I don't have any of the connectors that Holly's using, so I'd rather cut it off and switch over to something that I've kind of standardized on the car, so that way if I'm ever out on the road, I can, you know, bring a few spare pins and, you know, crimpers and stuff with me, and then in theory I could redo it if I had to. Alright, now that the coil wiring is all done, it is time for everybody's favorite cleanup. Now that we have finished cleaning up, we can get back to fuel lines. So you can see I just dumped out a box of connectors, so I do have a new pile of stuff so I can get back to these fuel lines. So if you recall where I left off, this fuel line here is actually a -8. For some reason I thought it was a -10, so I didn't have any of the -8 fittings that I was going to use, so I had to buy some, and that of course takes a few days. So now that I have them in, I can drill the -8 bulkhead through, get it mounted, and then start fabricating the rest of the lines. But of course, where the number 10 bulkhead was, since the 10 bulkhead is longer, I will need to move that bulkhead location down. Yeah, but first I'm going to try and get this stainless steel bolt that's just completely screwed out. I don't try too long, it's completely fucked. I'm going to have to drill it out and fix that section of the frame later. yeah, so we're just gonna finish off building this new cable, and then we'll figure out where we're gonna drill the bulkhead through. As you can see, I'm trying to use the clamps or the jaws that I use in the vise just to hold this and give me something to hold on to while I'm installing the hose end. But you can see I dick around with this for a while, and it just never works out. No matter how many times I tried, it just is no good. So you can see I'm trying, and then it just all goes to shit. So this was not the way to do this. So I'm grabbing my AN wrenches and grab some WD-40 just to make it so that the hose end goes in there a little bit easier. So we're just going to grab the drill, grab a drill bit, and then we're going to measure the size of the threads on the bulkhead connector so we know what size of a hole to drill. And now we're going to drill out the hole just below the -10 hole that I drilled. So I think, as it turns out, the end that I put on this hose was just slightly the wrong angle, and it with the bulkhead installed, it never I was never able to actually get this one on there because it was just right up against the panels. So I'm going to disconnect this end and throw the other end, which definitely works on. I think this was probably like a either a 60-degree end and I need a 45, or was a 45 and I need a 30. Whatever it is, I need one step down. Now that we have a beautiful looking dash 8AM that you cannot see, it's hidden, it's secret, you know, it's a trade secret, I guess. We're going to start on the dash 6 line right beside it. So I am using the soft jaws or the vice jaws to hold this while I cut it, because when I was cutting the last one freehand, it sucked. So this is a much better, safer way to do this if you're doing it with the hose still on the car. And even though it is just rubber hose, there is some steel inside the rubber hose that's steel reinforced, so that's why I'm still wearing the face shield, because you know it's possible that you're gonna cut something and it gets thrown in your eye. I mean, you don't really want rubber in your eye either, but you definitely don't want one of the little chunks of steel getting cut and thrown in your eye. So just wear, you know, eye protection. It's super easy. It doesn't detract from anything. You can, in theory, you can still see. So I finally got that end on. That was a struggle, and now I'm trying to build this end. But as it turns on for dash 6, the hose end is none of the size wrenches that I have. It's in between like a 6 and an 8, I think. So it's like a dash 7 wrench that you would need, which just doesn't exist. I never ran into this issue when I was doing any other dash 6 lines. And that's because I was using the soft jaws and the vise. So I ended up calling a friend, and obviously off camera I went over to my friend's place and I borrowed his crescent wrench, which is similar to the one that I already have, but that allows me to build this hose end on the car. Yeah, so I have since bought another AN crescent wrench. It's one of those things where, had I known from the start that the wrench set wouldn't be sufficient, I probably either would have bought 2 crescent wrenches at that time or just 2 crescent wrenches. Although after I've been working on AN lines on the car now, it is beneficial having just the wrenches so that you can tighten these fittings. Like the crescent wrench is very nice. It grips on, what is it, 5 of the 6 sides or whatever. But it is a little bit of a, like trying to get into that tight -8 90 would be a bit of a challenge, I think. Yeah, okay, since I have those bulkheads installed now, I can start actually working on the fuel lines. So coming out of the bottom of that fuel pressure regulator is the return line. It is a -6 return line. So that is going to go right to the -6 line I just put through the firewall. Or not the firewall, the fender. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to figure out which fittings I need. I think it ends up being like a 45 off the regulator, and then I need a straight off of the bulkhead, and I don't actually have a straight right now. So I can do part of the fuel line, but I can't do all of the fuel line. I can do part of the return line, but not all of the return line. But I can start building that 6 to come off of the fuel pressure regulator because I have that fitting. So this hose just wasn't cut cleanly, which is why I'm just taping it off and putting another cut on it. Okay, so we got that hose end, and I'm just sticking the remainder of the hose through that -10 AN hole that I made. And that's because, as I mentioned earlier, I need the straight fitting that I just don't have right now. So what I'll do is I will, move on to the rest of the lines. So I've got the 8 AN feed line to go from the bulkhead into the Y block at the back of the intake. So that's what I'm going to build right now. I think what I'm doing is I'm looking to see what the hell I did with my electrical tape, because I need to tape off this hose before I can cut it, and I think I realized that it was in my pocket the entire time, so go me! Just like that, our Dash 8AN feed line is done and installed. Fuck, that's beautiful. I still need to do the Dash 6, but as I said, I need a straight fitting, which is the one fitting I did not buy. I've got like everything else, 30, 45, 60, 90, but yeah, I never bought any straight fittings, so oopsie. So you can see in the back, at the back of the car, there's a small chunk missing from the cutoff valve to the fuel filter. So I'm just going to very quickly build this small little piece. off camera, I went back to my buddy's place to return him his red AN crescent wrench there, and he happened to have a 6 AN straight fitting, so I bought it off of him, and so now I can finish off that little tiny line for the return line. So it looks like my first cut on this hose was too long, so I'm going to chop it down a little bit more. And with that, I believe the fuel system is done. There might be one or two small things left to do at the back of the car, like I'm probably gonna need a vent line, so maybe it's not done, but we're 99% there. Alright, let's do a little bit of cleanup. Alright, now that we've got those fuel lines done, we can get back into installing the bulkhead connector. I've got studs that are long enough that should allow it to clamp onto the firewall now. I'm just kind of trying to figure out the best way to orient this for all of the connections that need to happen. And what I'm doing is I'm swapping around the 6 and the 8 just because of how it'll fit in relation to the heater box, as well as I think I moved the heater pipes either up or down depending on again where they're going to be in relation to the heater core. So what you can kind of see here is those 2 copper tubes at the top. That's for the heater. So that's why I moved the heater up to the top of that block. And then moving backwards, you've got the, I think it's the small -6 fitting in front, and then, yeah, you got the small -6 fitting in front, and then the big number 10 fitting, not -6, number 6 fitting in front, and then the big number 10 in the back. And that's why I moved the fittings around on the bulkhead connector. That's why I put the number 6 on the left, the number 10 on the right, just so that it lines up a little bit easier with what's going on inside the car. And I of course dropped one of the nuts, so gotta look for it on the floor. This is one of the nice things about having a clean floor. Usually stuff like this is pretty easy to find. We are in pretty tight quarters, so it's kind of hard getting the camera angle right in what I'm doing. So look at my nice new hat. I love that hat. Now that the bulkhead connector is in, we can start working on some heater hoses. So I'm just trying to figure out which line the heater valve should go in between, because there's a line going from the water pump to the heater core, and then from the heater core returns back to the intake. So I just need to know where the heater valve goes, like which one it goes on. this right here is the heater valve itself. So it came with some fabbed wires. Classic Auto Air, all of the wires on this were, you know, at a specific length. So in theory, you would have to install this in a very specific location that's very close to the heater controls, or you can just punch like a hole through the firewall and, you know, have your connectors come through there. Obviously on this car, as you see, all of the wiring is custom. So yeah, so I disconnected all the heater valve wires and I'm going to run it into the connector and then to the heater valve. So now I'm just getting that wiring kind of laid out and in position. So I'm just going to zip tie it up and then we can you know, figure out where to mount the heater valve on the engine bay side. Alright, so with those wires zip tied, we have very limited places where we can put this. It essentially, you know, it can only sit on the frame rail, which would be super close to the header, which I don't really like. I want it a bit higher up, so obviously this position is not going to work for me. So what I need to do now is I need to go off camera and do a ton of research and see if I can find that connector and buy that connector and the ends so that I can recrimp new wires. So on that, that actually brings us to the conclusion of this video. So as always, if you've stuck around, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.